Hey guys, here's another Apex World for Dummies show. This time with Philipp Hartenfeller, and we're talking about this testing framework I heard about from you recently in a tweet. Philipp, what is it about? Tell
Yeah.
us.
First off, thanks for your invitation. Really glad I'm here. And yeah, we and a few colleagues from MTAG, we developed a testing framework. We want to make testing Apex apps easier. And yeah, that's LCT. We called it LCT. Stands
Why do
for
you call it LCT? Why you guys always are so have this three letters acronym? I totally get it. That Dimitri started with this AOP thing, right?
yeah.
It makes sense in this small community where you say, oh, this Apex Office print. Okay, this is known, right? In the community area. And I totally get that he's also proceed with this acronyms with this APE, this APE thing, and now Apex Office Edit, AOE, and so you're confined in this three-letter thing. I get it as long as you're in this small community, but why don't you guys just use a real name that people, a product name, right? Like we started with HTMLDB, and then Larry said, no, this is not a name, right? That's nobody understands that. So why are you? What is this? Why are you coming up with this three-letter thing?
It's also a shortened acronym. So it stands for low code testing. And I guess I say it most of the time because it's shorter, like we all call it Apex instead of Application Express. But yeah, it's not like we need three letters and then go to a random generator, but it stands for low code testing.
Yeah, but
so
it's just a suggestion. So if you want to be successful with a product, give it a name that business people understand, right? That you can remember, because who is buying this stuff? Right? I'm not buying it. So my project manager is buying it. He has a budget, right? And if I say, yeah, we need LTC, say what? LCT? No. LSD? No, that's your drug. Right? And so I need to have a real name. Just a suggestion. Think about a real name that business people can remember. All right.
We may need to sit down with our team and be more creative.
All right. So is it specific for Apex testing?
Yeah, it's specifically tailored for Apex. It's not really good for testing anything else. Also, that's where the name comes from. It's low code because we look at the metadata from Apex, like Apex does with their low code approach. And it's not that you write all the tests with code, but you get a user interface, you get metadata driven wizards where you can select buttons that are actually on your page and don't have to manually search for buttons on the page. And that's why, we call it low code.
It's really tailored to Apex only.
Yeah.
So you need to have this repository. Okay, great, which is a good thing, which means so we get the most out of it, right? Instead of, I heard about the other testing frameworks like Cypress.io or this JavaScript thing. I think Vincent showed it once. I don't know, but I remember that there is some way to do the front end testing, right? And with this JavaScript testing framework, I understood the whole concept, but it is a lot of effort. You don't hear me anymore?
We were gone for a few seconds
guys,
there.
so the problem is every now and then, so I cut out for 5 seconds and nobody knows why. Right? Zoom doesn't know why, and well, maybe I'm not really there anymore. I don't know. Ghost. But I think the recording is still on. So whenever Philipp raises his hand, it's just he doesn't hear me anymore.
I don't have a question, but
I remember that when I saw this demo with the Cypress.io demo, I said, I get the approach, but it's really work. It's hard work to keep this up and running. You need a guy completely focusing on this thing 24/7, right? You need to have, which is a good thing, and which I think is really underestimated how important testing is. I had a very good talk with Ronnie a year ago, I guess, and he explained the whole QA cycle in his company. Then they had 5 different systems. So they have this regular development test, but they had another test and another pre-production test environment. And I was very impressed that he said, in this pre-production test environment, we still find, I don't know, 30% of things, right? Because you have the real data there. I don't know what was the constellation, but I said, yeah, you can't test enough. And quality of a software is so crucial and so essential, because so every bug costs us so much time and money and effort and drags down the reputation of your product and your company. Right? So people just focus on new features, new features, new features. We have 50 new features. I don't care, because most of the software is good enough, right? It would be great to have 2 or 3 new features, but 100% error-free, which is not possible, I know. But I mean, it's also happening with Apex, but with all the other software, Apple software, everything, right? It's becoming more and more buggy. And this costs you so much time, reputation, and money. So we have to sit together. We have a team of 5, 6, 7 people. So we talk about that multiple times, and then we think about workarounds, and then you build the workarounds, and then suddenly there's a fix, and the fix is not working with your workaround. So you have to start from scratch, and it's so much effort, and people really underestimate the quality of software, how important that is. So I cannot stress it enough, and I'm really curious what this product can do. So
yeah, as you said, that Concept or Cypress, the testing frameworks, where you said that it's a whole story of itself. And I think we as Apex developers, we want to do everything. At least I do. I like doing data modeling, PL SQL, business logic, and front end, because it's all really basic. So for example, Apex, we just add a component. We don't look into the JavaScript, what's behind there. We may use the API, but we don't really know what's complexity is stored in there. And I think that's why, or we thought, we want to make testing like this, because we don't want to make Apex like you can do everything besides testing is a whole topic. We want to do just a little bit on top of it for an Apex developer, testing, and also just hide the complexity behind our UI, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Show it to us.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
Show what you have.
And yeah, now you should see our app. So the first thing you can see, it's also an Apex app. So you might feel at home or looks familiar, I guess. And yeah, that's our first page you will see, and the homepage. And we first off have a list of worksheets. And worksheets is like, if you want to stay in the database logic, it's like a package. So it's a bundle of tests, like a package has simple procedures and functions. A worksheet has cases.
Philip, worksheet is not a good name.
No?
This worksheet is everything, right? So it's workspace, worksheet, and so it doesn't tell me what you expect there. So it doesn't tell me what, like you said, it's a package, or just write something like test package, or tell me what it really is. And worksheet is something like, well, could be everything. And most of the time you think of worksheets in Excel, right?
Yeah.
So another
naming thing we need to think about. Yeah. But you could say I make a worksheet to test this app, or maybe this part of this app, so you bundle a few tests that are logically, or the topic of it are next to each other. So it has multiple tests in it. And yeah, in it are test cases. That's just one small login and create a customer, for example. And these consist of a few actions like click this button, fill this field, etc. And yeah, let's just maybe create our first test and start really simple. For demo purposes, I use the mother of all demo apps, I guess, sample database application.
Yeah.
It's a packaged app from Apex, from the developers themselves. And yeah, if you want to test this, the first thing you need to do is actually log in, because yeah, our testing framework really opens the browser in the background and opens the app. And the first thing you get redirected to the login page. So what we need to do is log in, basically. So let's do that. So yeah, back into the app, I'm going to create a worksheet. Call it World Demo, for example. And here's the first thing with how we look into the metadata, because this LCT apps sits in our Apex environment. We can actually query which apps are installed.
Do you need special? So it's part, you install it in your workspace.
Yeah, you can also install it in any workspace. There's a apex.world you can add to your schema, I guess apex admin read or something, and then you can look at all the apps in all workspaces. And yeah, I'm gonna select it. That's also just a default for now. We can change it afterwards. But for example, if you test multiple apps, some apps, or you have a portal app that links to another app, for example, then you can also test multiple apps in one test. And we also get the base URL. You can change that afterwards if you want, for example, to test your another environment like your test DB or something. So it's created, and we can then go into there, and we see nothing because yeah, we haven't done anything yet. And yeah, as I said, now we need to create a case. That's a simple test, a single test you want to run. And here we have a few options again. We can duplicate another one, we can copy one, but we have nothing yet. So we need to create an empty one, or you can create one via a wizard. That's what we're gonna do later. But for now, let's create an empty one. I have to, again, name it, and I just want to log into our app. So now we have our test case created, and now we're in depth, and we need to add simple single steps, single tasks we want to do. So we click this button, and we get a list of things we can actually do. We have a few steps for now, and yeah, what's the first thing we want to do? We actually want to go to the page we want to test. So I'm going to say navigation. And again, you can see here, I have pre-selected my application ID, and I can select the page I want to navigate to. Because we want to do a login, we go to the login page here. So we call this go to login page, and we press this button so we can generate our URL path. We can also manually do it, but if we enter this one here, we can generate it.
Yeah.
And press create, and that's our first step. Next thing here on this page is username and password fields. So we need to obviously put a username and password in there. That's also fairly simple. We have a helper called fill field. And again, we select the page here. It's a login page. Then we can select an element. So again, we look into the metadata, what elements are stored on that page. We have these two fields.
What about if you, I don't know, okay, the approach is from the front end, right? I'm just thinking about if you have hidden fields. Are you showing hidden fields too?
I guess we query just all the fields that are on the page. We exclude some items we can't interact with, but...
And it would show the type hidden then, right?
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, actually.
Because the question is, who is my customer? Who can I give this? Who can I give this application to? Is it a guy who needs to have Apex knowledge or deep Apex knowledge, and he needs or really needs to know or even the developer itself? Is it more a developer testing tool that the developer, like the Apex Sec, right? Tool from the Rex guys. You need to be Apex developer. You need to test your app, right? Otherwise, you cannot decide about the false positives in this app. And is this something I can give somebody who is just an Apex application user, the business people, or but if I say probably not. If I say username, password, they understand that username and password is a thing. But if they pay 101, what is the role of the guy who is building these test cases? What would you say?
Firstly, we wanted to make it easier for Apex developers, but we still have customers who have dedicated testers. So I guess our goal is also to make it possible for them to train to test Apex apps. So yeah, we also have the label here, but I guess we have to put more info into there. Is it hidden, or maybe are there some conditions on it? That are things that we can do in the future.
So, because when I think about that, it's like, so there are two approaches. Like if you say it's not only for Apex developers, or it's especially not for Apex developers, or there are two modes you can work with this thing, right? Like show me everything, like I'm a developer, or I'm just a user who knows the applications in and out. And these are the business people. So most of the time I understand 30%, 40% maximum of what I'm really coding and what I'm really doing. The business people know everything back and forth, and this would be so they cannot see hidden items, right? That's not a thing. But on the other hand, for the developers, they have to see this. They say, okay, I create a test case which could never be achieved by a front-end input, right? Then you can also create test cases as developer test case and use case, which would be hard or basically impossible to achieve with just a front-end input. Just my 2 cents.
But we are also, if you're this demo, of course I practice, but if you're really creating tests from ground up, you will run into errors or things you haven't thought about. And that's why we also have some debug capability. So we will add a few steps, run it and see, does it even work? And if not, you can see why it didn't work and then have to fix again. So it's a trial and error thing also, everything in testing, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to select username field here. I created a demo user here. Is it the one? Yeah. And I have to put a name in there. Fill username. Great. And password, I can just, in this case, I can duplicate my step here. So I have a third one and change it from here. Password, change the element and our super secure password. Yeah, last thing we need to do is click this button here. We also have a click helper. Again, I have to select the page, get a list of buttons. We only have one, so click that. And here I'm going to click triggers navigation because it's a button that will trigger a navigation. It will load afterwards. So we say, wait for the load till it finished. So we then move on with our test.
Yeah.
So if we do it here in the real app, we can then maybe check if it really worked. So we can do that obviously in many things. We can check for things on the page, and I want to do it now with the H1 tag, the title of the application here. And for that, I'm gonna have a look here. So this is now where we are not 100%. We have for now not a helper that says check region title, for example. That's maybe we could add it in the future, but we can also do now more granularly work. So if I go to the browser DevTools, I'm gonna right click inspect element here. We can see that this title is a H1 tag, and as a page only should have one H1. We can just assume it's unique and it has a specific title to it. So if we see it on the page, we know we are on this here actually. So I'm going to add another step that says C element. So we validate if something is visible. And in this case, we are not going to go to the metadata, but we can also select custom selector. And as I said, it's an H1 tag, so we can put CSS selectors in here.
So CSS selector means you can also combine them. It's just like a tag with this specific class.
Yeah, you can have a really long ones where you first go to an interactive grid and then to row 3, for example.
Yeah. What about if we have different environments like sample application def, sample application int, sample application for prod without any addition? So if you would on different environments check different things.
So if this name would be different also.
Let's assume the name would be different or anything. It's just an example now, but let's assume on different environments, you know, we have different colors in the header for development and integration that we know, okay, we are on development, now we are on integration, and in production, the color is gone. But we also have maybe in parentheses development and integration that people know that they are where they are. So is this a thing where you can distinguish between different environments, or do you have to create different test cases then for different environments?
I would say if you want to this test to work on every environment, you shouldn't choose any selector that's dependent on the environment. For example, if here would be def behind this title, and I wouldn't select this attribute to check on the page, we could also maybe check for this dashboard text here. That's stable in every environment.
So make the basic expression is don't make your test cases environment specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a really huge topic. We also tell a lot of customers when we train them on LCT that how you manage your selectors or how you structure your tests is the key of good tests and stable tests.
And also be aware of, you know, markup changes in Apex, right?
Yeah. But in the helpers we provide, for example, this field we did before, where we just fill an input. That's what we want to do. We want to encapsulate that away. So if there's a version upgrade, we detect you on a newer version and want to make the changes to the generated code automatically, so you don't have to decide. For example, we develop in an older Apex version that hasn't the new URL syntax, but we still support it. So we have customers on newer Apex versions, and it works for them. We just check: do you have a new version? Does your app use the new URL syntax? And then we change our test generation based on that.
And if there is a logical path from Apex version 1 to 2, and you say, okay, you can then switch the test cases for the newer versions.
Yeah, we would do that in the backend. We have a data layer in between. We don't generate code from this UI. We have a layer in between that just has the information, and then we generate the code. So if there would be an upgrade, we still have the relevant information, and then in the code generation, we look, are you on a new version, and then change the code generation. So yeah, we are a little bit flexible in this. So yeah, that's one of our main goals, to be version independent.
Would it be a good idea to just pops into my mind if we would use specific test classes that never changes, where you say, okay, this is, I would say, LCT minus, something, right? So I can also I can also rely on this class, no matter what Apex is doing with changing the markup languages and the universal theme version. Is this something that would make sense?
Yeah, actually, many companies do that besides from Apex. Big websites, for example, and they add, for example, some data. So data is a HTML property. And then they do test ID, and then title, for example, and then we can just specify this attribute and go to it directly without anything that Apex generates. Okay, that's also a great way, but yeah, you have to, in the page designer, there's this custom attribute section, you have to do that manually.
Yeah, sure. But once it's done, it's there forever, right? I mean, let's say Apex decides, oh, this thing is not called, if you say it's a hero region title, and then they come up with well, hero is not politically correct anymore because everybody says hero. No, I don't know, right? Let's call it everybody's region, right? From now on. Then you're gone, right? But your custom attribute or custom class is always there.
Yeah, in the stuff we generate in the backend, we mostly go on static IDs. So Apex generates static IDs even if you don't put them. Yeah, and yeah, that's one that hopefully never change, that they add a new prefix or suffix or something. Or maybe you can also react to that change. But yeah, it's really important. For example, I could have chosen this hero region title, but maybe if another developer adds another hero region, then it wouldn't be unique and our test would fail. So it's a science for itself which selector to use actually.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I also want to move on with the test. I want to also search for this text. So we don't, an H1 is maybe on every page. We want to really find this H1. So I'm going to also, oh no, now I removed it instead of copying it. I also want to filter on the text. So I'm going to copy that and go back to our test definition. And we can, beside our selector, we can also filter out the text. So look, check with page title. And just for us to see if it actually worked, we can also add a screenshot afterwards.
Yeah.
Screenshot page and p1.png. And we have also in-depth options here. We could also only screenshot a region, but if we select nothing, we just get the whole viewport, so the browser view, basically. Oh no. Haha. I think I found a bug. Yeah, I actually found a bug. Again, let's try again.
Are you using the testing framework for your testing framework?
That's on our roadmap, but in the last few months, we redesigned the whole front end, this new look and changed the pages a lot. So now we're in a more stable state where we say, yeah, we want to do it now. But unfortunately not yet, but that's on our roadmap. But that's really cool, I guess. It was really cool for me always that the Apex page designer is built with Apex, and I always thought, wow, that's cool. And we are at the point where we could ourselves.
I remember when Joel first told me, and then I said, well, Mark was basically the first guy who told me that Apex is built with Apex. And what? Did I drink something today? Didn't get it. I didn't understand it for a very long time. It took me a while.
Yeah.
Contemplate about that. Apex is built with Apex, but what is? There must be an egg and
a chicken egg.
Who is first? Yeah. And then Joel explained it in his first podcast in detail, I guess, how everything turned out. And
so I would say we are done for our first test. We just log in, really simple, and we can just run it here. And here we can change the URL, change the name. Conversion is versioning of our test, so we can see if we change it a lot over months, we can go back to an earlier version, for example. And that's one of our cool features, I guess.
A conversion means you have multiple versions of a test case?
We as I said, we save this definition files is not in code saved, but in a basic JSON format with the relevant info. And from that, we're going to generate the test code. And we save the generated code so we can see what changed.
Philip. I mean, you're going too deep, right?
Yeah,
But as a customer, right? As a regular customer who has little Apex knowledge, know what Apex is. So now I have a test case, but you say run worksheet. But a worksheet comprises of multiple test cases. Is this right?
yeah. So if we would have many cases, it would run all the cases in this
It would
worksheet.
run all the cases. Okay, that's an important information. And the conversion is what exactly? So is this, you have a worksheet version 1 and worksheet version 2 and 3 and 4?
Yeah, basically, if we change something after executing the first time, we would see that the code has changed. And we put it in the database, and afterwards, if you want, we can see the changes we made to the test code, and maybe find out, oh yeah, there we have a new bug, or maybe someone deleted a case, and we can still retrieve what we did there.
It's like a how do you say code
versioning, maybe
versioning thing, right? You have, once you run this thing and you edit it afterwards and it's crap, you say, okay, let's go back to the version.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, last option is, I think, really cool, that we're really proud of, because we chose a testing framework. So in the backend, we still use a JavaScript framework that executes the tests. We, of course, didn't write our own, and we chose Playwright because it can actually run all big 3 browser engines.
What is Chromium. It? What do you call it? What is it?
Playwright.
Can you show it?
Can show it. Yeah, it's backed from Microsoft, so it's a huge company behind it, and they actually migrated the team behind Puppeteer, that was also a testing framework before that, from Google. And yeah, it's the first one, I guess, I'm not really sure, but in my knowledge, it's the first one to really support all browser engines. Mm-hmm. Safari they're the only I know that support Safari.
So and, basically the competitor to the Cypress IO is the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. Okay. So this is the layer where you finally do all the front end input stuff, right? What a user would normally do, you do this with this JavaScript framework. Okay.
Yeah, we generate the code for this engine and execute it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you generate the code. Okay, now I get the architecture. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I could change to Firefox WebKit, but let's stay with Chromium, and I can say execute now, or maybe I want to do it this night, for example. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we get redirected. This is our queue page, so where we see the history of all tests executed, and really cool, on the right side we see actually what's happening live. So it's already done. Test only took 3 seconds, but as you could see, it's really a live output from the Docker container that runs in the background, if you want to know the specifics. And yeah, you can see in lifetime what works, what doesn't work, maybe.
Okay, what exactly do you need to install to run, and where do you need to install it? I mean, it's clear that you install the Apex application in your workspace, but what else do you need to get this run?
So yeah, we have an LCT server. It's Node.js, so JavaScript based, like AOP, for example. Mm-hmm. And this backend connects to the database, so we can read the information, and we also generate the code there. But we also have this runner layer that can execute code test. And for that, we call the Docker API. We have our own Docker image. So Docker is a container.
Too much complicated names.
Okay,
let's start with the architecture. I get the architecture of AOP, right? You have this Node.js server, and it runs on any server. It could be the database server. It could be a separate server. This is the same thing for that. You have, and if you have can you also, is a Node.js server something like you can run AOP and LCT with the same server, or or do you say no, these are 2 separate things?
Oh, you can actually put it on any server that supports Node.js. I think that's almost anyone. And you can run things on the side. That's no problem.
So I get that. No, you have database, install the Apex application. Check. You install the Node.js server and run your engine there, right?
Yeah.
And this is connecting to the database and does stuff like, creating this. What is the name again from this testing framework? Playwright thing, right? So you create this Playwright scripts, and they are run. I don't know. What? Take me from there. So I get the node server, I get the database part, and what's happening next?
So we don't just run it on the server. We have a virtualization layer around it. So we create a single container that has a small operating system only needed for the test. So we have a clean environment.
Is this something if you say you create a container, is this something you do on the fly and create something like an on the fly environment where you do stuff? I don't care.
It only exists for the duration of the test. And we can also...
Do I have to install anything else? So do I have to install Docker stuff?
Yes. It's managed by Docker. And we just call the Docker API to say, please launch this container. We say the image, it's our operating system we provide that just has a testing framework dependencies, and point to the test files we created and put on the disk. And it's just...
Where do I install this Docker thing?
It's on the same server as you put the Node.js server. We just needed to have an access. And if you have a Linux, you just install it via the package manager, or in Windows, you can download it and double click on it, I guess.
Yeah, it's not only... You're always thinking it from a technical perspective. I'm thinking it from a perspective, what am I allowed in a huge corporation to do? Right? There are a lot of restrictions that makes no sense at first sight. I say, what? No, you can do this, you can do that, you can do it's you, and you're getting more and more restricted every year.
Yeah, that's a huge topic, of course. And also you have, as a container starts and runs a test, it needs to access the Apex application. So there needs to be a connection from the server you're running it on to the data, to the Apex or the odds.
Can you talk about server now? So can you go exactly step by step? So what is called first and what is done next? So I get that you, and we as an Apex and database people, we understand. So you have an Apex application and you create some metadata in the database. That's clear that you do this on the fly like you do with every Apex application every day. And then you create so I think I see just a repository on your side of the data you have input in your LCT Apex app now, right? So there are the data sitting in your LCT repository. And the next step is, so you call the Node.js server, and the Node.js server is connecting to the database, reading all the metadata and creating this Playwright scripts.
Yeah.
Right now, I have the Playwright scripts in my hand. So what is the next step? You create this Docker container from the Node.js server?
Yeah, from the Node.js, we just say to Docker, hey, can you please do that for us? Can you create the container? And we have to say, okay, our test script lays on this folder. So it just maps the file into the container. So it actually can run the test. And we also provide, the Docker image is the operating system the container actually uses. So we just use the Playwright container image. So Playwright also have a complex Linux Docker image that has dependencies to run a Playwright test, basically. So you don't have to install it on your server
What you're
yourself.
saying is that this Docker image that is created is basically creating an environment the end user has, like a Windows machine running a Chromium or Firefox.
Yeah, it's
Simulate this thing, or is this right?
yeah, for example, if you have a Linux server without GUI, so without a desktop or anything, it still works because the Playwright team cares about what dependencies they need to install to emulate it. So it's really not trivial. I'm not no expert what they're doing in there.
But for us business people, right? This is apex.world for Dummies. You basically create an environment where the browser engine is running.
Yeah.
Right. And the browser needs to run somewhere on based on some operating system. And everything runs in this Docker container. And you create this on the fly with this browser engine, and with your environment, you need to run the browser. And then the browser is running the scripts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and then you have still the connection to your Node.js server, and you say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then you send this back to your database and now I get this in this report, yes or no, the output log and all the stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Here we can see one case finished and also was successful. Here, for example, would be 3 cases, 1 failed. And if I click on this eye, we can also see the screenshots that were taken. So we can see here, yeah, we are actually in the app. Great.
That's nice. I like the screenshot idea. But how do you, just personal interested in this, how do you show this live logging thing in the Apex app from a different server? How do you do that? Is this really a thing? Can I do that in my company? The company I'm working with right now. Is this a thing? Do I need to have special rights to access a file on the Node.js server?
Yeah, this is actually the most complicated part. We can also shut it off completely because you don't need it. It's just a nice to have feature. But yeah,
I want to have it. I love it. I love it that it's right. But
the problem is you need to connect to the Node.js server from our client. So when this runs, my computer is connected to the Node.js server that runs the test. And all the other things we do, we call it from the database, like AOP, for example. If you generate a document, then you just say, I want this one, and the database runs the rest.
Yes, exactly.
Command to the Node server. So that just needs to be a way from the database to connect to the.
Exactly. Yeah.
And my client could be outside the company network. I only need to connect to the Apex app. And this technology is with WebSockets, and I need to directly connect to the server.
Okay.
And that can be complicated to set up.
Then this is not a thing, right? We just
it's a cool demo feature, but
it's not a real world customer, because no way you will ever have access from your desktop to the server in the company. It's not a thing.
Maybe some small companies, but yeah, in enterprise it's really hard. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, now I'm happy with the architecture.
We can also look here on the test files. So we just dump all the files that just get created with the test into here. So you can just have a look at it, or maybe download them, and you could run the test on your machine as well. So we have, for example, Playwright config, where we have some configuration settings.
What do you mean run on my machine as well? What do you mean? I can open the browser and put this into the console, or what do you mean?
A little bit more complicated, but you can, if you download Playwright and also set up a test, you can then place the files in there, and you would have the same. It would run the test in the same way it would run on the server. So
you're basically saying if I would install Playwright on my desktop, then I can also use these files and open my actual browser to
Yeah, it would open a test file, but this is only for people who want to know what's happening behind there, but it's not really necessary. So it's just it's transparent in there.
It's not a real use case. It's not something, it's not a thing like my project manager says, well, I don't trust all these things, but I can take this file, run it in my desktop, and see if this is really happening. And
yeah, it really controls the browser. You can actually see how it's magically pressing buttons and stuff.
Okay,
it's
so
cool.
Actually can look at it like a movie and see, oh, I see what's happening. Okay. So then it's a use case, right? Instead of having everything running in the background to basically see, oh, I'm watching Netflix on one screen and I'm watching the testing running through on the other screen. Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
Okay.
And for example, don't want to go into depth in here, but this is the actual test we run. So JavaScript file, and yeah, this is a complex code we generate. You could argue if how complex it is, but that's really the thing we generate and run on the server.
And this is this Playwright script now.
Yeah, that's the Playwright script. Yeah.
Can I fiddle around with it? Can I say, oh, I'm a Playwright guru and I would like to have a special thing in there, which you don't have in your front end and therefore repository, but I want to have a special test case because I know I'm a nerd, a JavaScript nerd, which I'm not, but if you would, that you can say, yeah, you can always tweak this file and run creative things, or is this read only?
This is read only for the reason that we actually lose some information in there. So for example, here you can see this is fill the password field stuff. And we don't actually, you could argue, okay, it's on page 101, we can pass this back, but we don't know in which application this is, etc. So in our layer where we store the test before it gets generated, we have more info like, yeah, this app and this button was checked, etc. So that's why we decided, no, you can't edit these files because we generated from a different layer.
Okay.
But you can edit it and only run it from your machine. But that's not really helpful, I guess. So yeah, that's the most simple part. What I now want to show you is how this can actually be done a little bit more simple. So as I told before, we can create.
Wait a minute. So now I see a test case with 6 steps. A very simple thing, right? 6 steps to have a login. Let's say we have a mediocre business case with 10, 15 steps or 20 steps. How can I distinguish them? How do I see the different steps, or can I, can you show me a real project with a worksheet where you have 1,000 test cases?
So this is only our demo environment. We don't have this many cases, unfortunately.
Is this a thing? Is this a real thing? Is this something? We will have real customers. They're really using it. They have 1,000 test cases in their worksheet, and they're really using it every day. Is this a thing? Or tell me about something about the how old is this thing, and is this a real product right now? Are you just developing, and this is a beta version?
No, we work closely with customers already, with a few, and we had a customer that actually his test suite ran around 30 minutes, I guess. It was at a time the tests were a little bit slower, so you could subtract some time, but 30 minutes is, you really tested a lot of cases, a complex application where we logged in with many different users and decided, can I see in this role, I shouldn't see this button, and validated that in the test, for example. And that's why there's really big worksheets were created there with many cases, etc. So yeah, that's what we want to support and do support.
Can you show me something at least with two test cases?
Yeah, I actually want to create another one and show something. So as I said before, we created an empty case. And we also have this option create case via wizard. And if you know in Apex, when you create a new page, you have also the option to create a blank page. Well, there are a few options. You can, for example, create a page with a chart, with many charts and put your queries in there, or for example, interactive grid with edit option, for example. And it makes it a little bit easier to do multiple steps in just one create wizard. And that's what we also wanted to achieve with LCT here. So we added an option here to add a new case and fill it with some prerequisites or fill it with some stuff that's already in with wizard. And if I go to the next page, we can then select.
And you give me something else. Don't do the same thing. Give me, now we are in the app. Show me, make a real use case. Well, test something.
Yeah. So we still need to log in again because the cases are encapsulated in itself. So you need to log in every case because this is the fail point. If the case before failed, then we don't expect to still be logged in because maybe something could go wrong. So we need to log in again. It's like we take a step back and start again.
But can I not say, okay, this like a hierarchical thing where I say, okay, I create this login thing pro step once, and everything else is basically inherit from this login. It makes no sense to create this login case 150 times.
So yeah, for now we have this login helper that just creates a new case with login. You can copy the steps over, but we're safe harbor. We're working on a feature actually right now that you can do some steps before any case. So before any case, you would do the login, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's obviously takes a lot of work off from the developers. So yeah, let's do something more really useful. So for example, we have this customers page here and we can create a customer. So let's try that. And this is a formula. So we have a fill form helper that is really useful. So it shows us the whole form and we don't have to add a step for every element, for example. So I'm going to say, okay, we fill this form. And we have a look, this is on page 7. So I'm going to select page 7, customer details. And as you can see here, it's a modal page. This is actually a complication because, as you may know, if you want to run a page from Apex, a modal page, it says you can't directly execute a modal page. Yeah. So we have to actually navigate to it. And we have this question here, test subject needs to be triggered. If we say yes, we can say, yeah, we need to trigger this modal dialog from page 2, customers. And we press the button, create customer, and click on it. Could also double click, but for a button, a click is enough. So again, as it's a new case, so we need to log in again, and we don't have this functionality yet. So we need to add a login. And again, username is apex.world, action is fill field, password is apex, fill field, login, click. So this is now a little bit easier because you can see all the elements of the page in this interactive grid and fill them out. And now the interesting part, we get also an interactive grid with all the items on this page. We get name, we get the type, text field, number field, select list, requirement. That's also really good to know because you would run into errors if you don't fill them. And we can then yeah, maybe at Mickey Mouse. Again, here I can choose the action I want to actually do. Fill field is the only useful one to fill this field, to fill this form. And here, customer state in this app is actually a select list here. So we are actually not free to use any value we want. So we need to make sure to choose a value that's actually in there. So gonna take Colorado. So stage Colorado.
Okay, so you have the display value. You type in the display value.
Yeah, the display value, yeah. And I'm going to, yeah, here we don't fill the field, we select the option. What is also required, postal code and credit limit. Mickey Mouse doesn't have any credit. Yeah, I think that's all. Maybe I can also put something in here. And then important, the create button we need to click, not the save button, yeah. Finish. And we now have the second case, we can switch between them. And yeah, with these few tasks, we actually generated a lot of steps. So the first few one are the login. Then we navigate to the page 2. Here we click the button that opens the modal dialog. And switch context, this is needed. This is now an in-depth testing thing because, yeah, these modals are an HTML page in an HTML parent page. So it's done with iframes. And we need to tell the testing framework, yeah, we're looking now in this HTML page. So we're gonna switch context to this iframe. And then these are the individual steps to fill the form. And on the end, we just click the create button. And yeah, and after that, we
screenshot.
Yeah, we need to actually move back to the parent page from the iframe because it gets auto-closed if I press add customer. We get to page 2 then. And then I need to switch context again.
Oh, you need, okay.
So switch. Yeah, that's something you should know.
But you should do that automatically if I have, modal dialogue handling, right? If you should give me this thing very easily because this is a very nerdy, you need to be a nerdy developer to do that.
Right? So that's something we want to work on. We could look, I guess, in the branches or the button in the process, there could be a closed dialog.
Yeah.
So
it should create it automatically, and it should be basically grayed out something I didn't do, right? All the stuff I didn't do, like the switch context, which you are creating, which you need. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Right. So that you say, oh, I didn't create the switch context test case. It's just it's a system generated thing. I need to let this use case run, but I'm not created it by myself. Okay.
Yeah, that's something for the future we want to do. Yeah. And yeah, let's make sure we are on this page. Same thing as before, it's an H1 with customers. So again, I add visibility, C element, yeah. Custom selector, H1, customers. And then we could add a screenshot.
Yeah, please.
Customer created.
Just one region. I want to have a region screenshot now.
Yo. So capture specific region, and we're gonna select page 2, and we get this interactive report here. And so fingers crossed that this works, but let's run it. So gonna schedule it. And now you can see actually here, we changed the test script. So we see version 2 here. Beforehand, it was version 1. And it also ran the first case that we created before. And now this second case, oh, it's already done. Great, it worked. And let's look at the output.
You're sounding very surprised. That makes me...
No. It's how it is with demos, but we actually see another problem. So we still have a problem, I guess. We see the report, but the screenshot was done so early.
Yeah.
The interactive report wasn't really resized on the page, or it didn't load still. So we actually need to do something. We can change it again. And also one thing, because this page has a unique constraint, or this table has a unique constraint. So if I would run it again, I would run into a unique constraint violation, and the test would fail. So now I need to manually delete it. A solution we had with customers is you create a cleanup package. So maybe we only insert Mickey Mouse here, then we can just add a procedure to delete Mickey Mouse. And then to put that package or the procedure into an ORDS, so it's available via REST. And in our test, we can then call with the REST service this ORDS before we run the test and clean up the data. And every time we run the test, we have a data layer that actually...
What does ORDS has to do with it?
It's a really easy way to make a procedure callable from this test container.
Okay.
We don't want to directly connect from the test container to the database.
So what you're saying is you provide a package where you clean up your test cases after they run once.
Or better before, because that's always...
Yeah, so you always clean up your test environment with all the test data. And this is still in the database, and you just REST enable this procedure through ORDS, but nobody needs to know that, right? It's still in the database, because the way you explain it is like you put something on the ORDS thing.
No. It's just click on REST enable and ORDS does this thing.
And then you can call this procedure all the time and say, okay, clear everything, and then run the test.
Yeah, that's of course a little bit work to do, but that's what you have to do if you want to do real life tests. So you can't...
What you have to do anyway, right? It's not tool specific. If you do it by hand, you have to do it the same way, right? You cannot do the same. You cannot insert the same record twice. So it's independent from any test system. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to manually delete Mickey Mouse. And so, maybe let's do something more specific here to make the screenshot right. So we have this search field. Let's just search for Mickey Mouse. And then if this is done, then we can make the screenshot. So this is also something we want to enable to make it easier in the future. We don't have any helper yet to filter interactive report, unfortunately. But because we have this custom selector layer in our steps, we can do it manually. So we can just go into the developer tools again, look, okay, this is an input and has a specific ID maybe, and then just call fill field like we did on the password field, for example. So I'm going to add a step, fill field. And the selector in this case is, this has a static ID. So we just use this. It's also prefixed with the report ID. That's great. So it's really unique. Enter my custom selector. And I'm searching for Mickey. Search report. So we now want to run this before our screenshot. So we have this move up button and we can then just reorder stuff. Press save. And we actually still need to press on the go button here. And this one is actually a bit more complicated because unfortunately it doesn't get a static ID generated from Apex.
Okay.
So here we need to do some selector magic. So I'm going to add a click. And for that, it's a button. And it has this data action search that's unique to any report.
Yeah.
So here I need to do the braces, and we can then query on an attribute. Like, for example, you could also then, if you implement a test ID, and because we could have multiple reports on a page, we only want to press on the right one. This only has right one, but a good forward-looking test would then also include a selector before that would narrow down the right report. So I'm gonna put the report ID before that.
Yes.
And
which is, guys, if you do regular CSS coding, this is what, or even jQuery coding, this is very familiar with you, right? This is what you use in jQuery or CSS anyway.
Yeah, that's also great that they don't want to reinvent the wheel everywhere. So that's great. And also important, now I'm going to check this click triggers navigation. This is a little bit misleading presented because it's not actually a navigation, but it's allowed. That happens. If I press go, then Apex sends a request to the database and says, yeah, query that, filter that query. And after a few seconds or milliseconds, then page comes back with the result and the report gets updated. So we need to say yes to wait till that happened and then take the screenshot when the filtering is really done. So click go, move up, and yeah, so maybe this works now. I hope. So yeah, let's should we use Fire WebKit maybe? So we test with Safari. And yeah, Chromium is the fastest one of all in my experience, but it's great, I guess, to test if it all really works with every browser. So if you have a company policy, only Chromium should be supported, for example, then it doesn't make sense. But if you have a product that's available to customers from the outside and they use their own browser choice, then it's great to also test other browser engines. So this also worked out well, and we get a screenshot and we see Mickey Mouse is really there.
Okay, nice.
And yeah, in a real test, I would also add, like we did see on the page, this H1, we would also maybe check that it's in the first row of the report to really make sure in the test that actually fails, because we now look manually on the screenshot and say, yeah, it's really there, but we want to make it in the tests that can actually fail, so we can then get an error if it doesn't work.
So if we get an error, what kind of error do we get?
So yeah, let's run this again, because now we would run into this unique error. So the unique key would fail. So maybe this time use Firefox. And now execute again the test. And it should take longer time, because our browser engine first waits a few seconds if maybe something is still loading or stuff. So if for example, you have a migration or big network issues, then the test could still run if it's a little bit slower. But what this also does, if some step failed, it reruns it again 3 times. Because if there's some testing is always a little flaky, front-end testing. There's always some stuff that could go wrong.
So
it then retries.
If you say it runs 3 times all the time?
Yeah, we want to make it configurable in the future. Don't have that in, it's just a config change. But yeah, that's something we also work on or want to have on a roadmap, let's say. And you could actually see, I guess here, yeah, this is the first thing. And this error is now an iframe error because it is expect the page to be gone, but actually it's still there because the error was posted. And you can actually, yeah, it scrolls down, but this runs again. So the log has actually multiple times this case in it. And yeah, it should be done soon.
What about the check the other ones, the red ones?
Yep.
Yeah,
oh, this is actually the same error. But what you get here is we do a screenshot on failure, so we can directly see, oh yeah, here's an error message. That's a problem. And something that's also really cool from our testing framework is we get these trace files that we also put into the database, so you can download it here. And if we go then to trace.playwright.dev, it says it runs locally. It's a web page that they don't send anything to the Playwright guys, so you have to trust them for now. Maybe we will rehost it in the future.
Don't trust anybody on the internet.
Yeah, we also argued
data in a browser. Period.
Yeah, but we talked about maybe rehosting it so you can run it locally because it's also an open source app. But also that's unfortunately stuff for the future, safe harbor, not implemented yet. And I'm dragging this file into here, and we can get actually a trace view. It's like if you do in your Chrome browser, you can press record, and then it saves a lot of data about what happens in detail. Make this bigger. On the left side, you would see every step and exactly the state of the DOM of the page as each step ran. So here we now entered Allison. That's another test with not Mickey Mouse, but Larry Ellison. And here another field was added, and here another one. And it's actually an interactive DOM, so you can inspect stuff here. It gets really small now. And also you get the error here. So this click didn't work. You get a log, and yeah, I think it's a really cool thing to debug your test without running anything on your machine, but in your browser.
Yeah, especially if you have some, front end issues, right?
Yeah.
The state of the DOM, this helps a lot. Because it's not just database things, it's also front end JavaScript things that come out, and then you see why it's happening. That's a nice feature. You should definitely do that, because nobody, hopefully with sound mind, would ever put his company data into an internet browser. Trust anybody. Sure. All right, nice. I mean, you're not allowed to anyway, right? You signed this up for sure that you will never do that. Interesting. Okay. Anything else you want to show? Or like go back to my two test cases now.
For the test case.
Or go show me something like the second one or the three where we have 3 test cases. I want to see the different test cases. There was one with 3 test cases.
I think I don't actually know what this includes, but let's find out. Is it this has a 0% success chance? This one, yeah, that's the same. This is a demo I practiced before, and in this one I added a login again, so it's not really more cool. So
how would you group these test cases? So because we see it's still a lot of work to do, right? You cannot get rid of the work, so you need still a guy 24/7 to build this up. You need to hire a guy to do that, and to, create new test cases for new modules, for new change requests. And this is a 24/7 thing for a guy. And and there are a lot of so we just create a customer with 20 steps. Assume we have a more complex thing, right, with 50 steps. And how would you group all this? Let's say you have 100 test cases. Is this still a valid navigation to understand the test cases, or would you say no, put it into different how you call it, worksheets?
Yeah.
Whatever you call that, right? So how would you group this thing? Maybe like a question is, when do you separate your Apex app in different apps and having 1,000 pages in one app? Is it
so? That's also an opinion thing, like in the Apex debate when you do a new app. But I would say that if you do lots of tests on a single app, then it makes sense to do multiple test worksheets on a single app, and maybe do one for, let's check authorization in this section, and do another one for that, because test execution will get longer, maybe more error prone, because it's code, like you develop your own code. A really big function is hard to debug than smaller functions. So I guess there's somewhere and there's a sweet spot where you say split it up into multiple worksheets. We also have some copy features for that.
I have multiple worksheets, Philip. If I have multiple worksheets, can I still say, okay, these multiple worksheets belong to app 300? So another sorting level.
We actually have here the sort.
Okay, you just would filter it like with the app ID. Okay.
Also, a feature for that would be test suites. That's another layer on top of worksheets. So you could say that's for if you want to run tests reoccurring. So you say every night, for example. And quickly going over it, just name it. And here you can add multiple worksheets. So I could say, first execute my worksheet we worked on before with Chromium. And afterwards, I want to execute my other demo in Firefox, for example. And then I can put some scheduling. Maybe I want to run it weekly on Tuesday, 3 o'clock maybe.
Database time.
Yeah, database time. I could also run this now manually. They will fail because I didn't delete them. But this also works a little bit different. It only gets queued. That's why here we see the clock. And then we have a progress in the background that checks if there's something queued and up now. So maybe now it started. And here's the log. Okay, was gone for a small second. And it runs the first worksheet. If it's done, it runs the second one. And there you can also see some info on how many failed. You could get an email if something failed. So this is where you bundle everything back up for your daily business.
Yeah.
And one thing I also wanted to say on how to structure the test, and that is it's better to make more cases with with not as many steps as to one case with many steps, because this is how the results are measured. So we see how many cases failed and how many cases are success. And if you have one which tests a lot of things at the same time, you don't really know what failed, only by looking at this metric. You don't really know if everything is broken or just one small feature. And if you split it up to many cases, you'll see maybe, okay, only 2 of 30 cases fail. It's not as dramatic as 1 of 1 fails.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately,
Anything else you want to show?
yeah, we have maybe small thing that's variables. So for example, if we don't want to create the same customer each time, we can maybe do a variable name cust name, and here can create multiple sets of that variable. So for example, I can first say Mickey and set 2 has Donald, maybe.
So Mickey Mouse is still a thing. I see.
That's just what came to my mind.
No, but it's still, I mean, I don't know. We are, I feel we are 40 years apart.
Yeah.
And it's still, we all know Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you still know Donald. That's a good thing.
But in my childhood, Mickey Mouse magazine and the lustige Taschenbuch in German, funny pocketbooks. I don't know if they are called that way in America or something.
Yeah.
Still big, yeah. And what I can do here is now I use this special syntax that says, okay, we have a variable here, and if I would run it, it would actually, yeah, dynamically look at which value it really puts in there. So we have some variation in what really to put in there. And you know, there could be problems with foreign names that have special characters in German umlaute or French, the roofs on the letters, and that could also be useful. Yeah.
All right. So is this already a product? Are you in development? Are you in beta? What is the state? What is the roadmap? What is the price? What are you?
Yeah, we don't have a price on the page, and you just pay money and you get the download. You have to contact us, and we make individual offering because we still want to train you. As we make individual offers, so you can book a training so that we help you get started and develop tests for you. For example, there are still many features that we want to implement. So we go to the customer and ask them, do you need anything? And then we do individual feature development. So we don't have a price yet. So we just do support contracts, we call it maybe.
Mm-hmm. So it's you cannot buy it as a product yet.
Yet, yeah, we can't.
Mm-hmm. How old is it? So what is version are we talking of right now? 109 or where are we?
We're a little bit afraid of putting the one before it. We are at 0.16 now. But it was an idea from Kai Donato. And I think it was Apex Connect 2018 where we showed the early prototypes of this. In this time, we changed a lot and did rework. We changed the test engine. We didn't use Playwright from the start. And so since 2 years, there's more focused development with the goal to really get this out to people. And yeah, a year ago, we really put a website out there. Now we're starting to do YouTube videos and marketing like this.
But now you're just looking for beta testers, customers, something more like that, right?
Yeah, I get to talk to people who are interested. And also we have customers we already have. We talk with them and work with them already. And yeah, so that's the state, you could say. Yeah.
Okay, so this is something to come. Soon, or say in a year, you would say in a year this would be a thing.
Yeah, we also get more focus on it, more developer time on it. More and more, it started like on a small hobby project, and get more people on it. So yeah, it moves faster than ever, you could say. Yeah.
Okay, but looks nice so far. So
Thank you.
I see the potential there. There is still a lot of stuff to do regarding naming, UI, and I mean, that's my part, my job as a UX designer, right? I see a web page and I see all the errors right away. And it's, of course, you are developers and you are engineers, and you say
Yeah.
it works. It works, and you can see all the information on the page. Yeah, that's the problem. You see all the information at the same time on the page, on the same page, right? It's very hard to focus on the end customer who is just, to get his mind and into his mind and saying, okay, he doesn't need to see that, like this navigation. So you have this left side navigation. I don't want to see that. And navigation, I don't need that. And only if I really want to switch something, and then I have another left side part where I see this test cases, right? It's very confusing, and the interactive grid itself, it's a very complex and confusing UI itself, right? And so when you have many things on top and on the left side, and it's that, oh my goodness, I'm totally overwhelmed. I cannot handle it. And so it would help a lot to make a nice UI and easy, especially easy UI, and then focus who should be your customer in the end. Should this be developers, or are you also targeting business people? When I mean business people, I mean technical business people. There are always this technical admin business people, right? Who are not developers, but they know everything by heart. And you can say, can I teach them like to select some DOM selectors, right? Can I teach them? Yes, you can, because these are Excel wizards. They have the technical knowledge to learn that. But then you don't show them hidden items, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you focus on the names. You don't show them P101. You don't show them that. If you can select this additionally, but if you are in business mode, you just show the customer what he really can work with, and not all those things. And you don't give him this iframe thing, right? Or how you call it? How do you call context switch? Or how do you call that?
Yeah, context switch. Yeah.
See, context switch, really? I mean, we know what we're talking about, but these are not.
Yeah, as a developer, you only look in documentation and how these technical people name it accordingly. But
yes, exactly.
The first time viewer, yeah,
but the
doesn't know what it
people
is.
Selling it to, they don't know what this is, and then they get intimidated. And the customers are not the developers.
Yeah.
Developers are not doing this. I tell you that, because they are lazy, and they're testing their case once. It works, done. I don't care anymore, right? I want to do something new. This is the heart of a developer. You don't let a developer test. You shouldn't. I mean, he should test his thing, but don't force him to do boring stuff like that. He don't want to do that. You need a guy with a different mindset who wants to find something, right? Who wants to find errors. There are people with this mindset. It's not my mindset, but there are people, and they love to work with that. They have the test cases and they let it run and say, oh, here's another bug and here's another bug, right? And you can pay them for every bug they find, right? That's something, or give them some benefits. So this is what I see, right? With my feedback right away. So there's a lot. That architecture is great, love it, understand it, makes sense, done.
And thanks a lot for your input. I mean, as you said, as a person who sees it the first time, it's a really different experience. Yeah. I looked at it for 2 years.
I know. You don't see
strongly.
It. Yeah. You get into that and say you focus on this one part of the screen, right? But to make it attractive for real customers, make it attractive as a real product. It could be a real product, because testing is a huge thing, right? We know that in every software, and Apex is all over the place now. And so testing is always a huge issue. And so therefore if you're smart, and I mean, not only with technical smart, but also smart in a UI area and in a selling to the right people area with a nice user interface, with a nice, easy to understand thing and help the people to create their own test cases. The business people, and I mean the technical business people, right? And say, okay, this is what you need to learn, and there is an easy introduction. I tell you how to select selectors, and here are examples, and blah blah blah. So, and which they also like to learn something new, but this would be my target audience. And then you have a switch for developers. And then they see hidden items and they can do crazy things as an additional benefit, which you cannot actually create easily or at all with the front-end input. You just add this hidden item and you put a 0 or -1 in this hidden item, which should never be a thing. But you want to test something as a developer case, right? You give them all the access.
Yeah. Expert mode, it's I see it more and more. For example, my router, there's also switch expert mode. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah.
All right. Great. Thanks. So
thank you for your invitation.
Yeah, sure. I'm always interested in new stuff around Apex, and that's could be a great product. So keep working.
I will do that. And with my team. Yeah.
And you can always show me something, right? You can always show me something over the fence and say, what do you think? Or how does this look like? Or I can tell you right away.
Thanks. That would be cool, yeah.
And then I hear from you when we are at version 1.0 and you have a mistake on it. So
that's scary, putting the version 1 before it.
Let's say we are now in September 22. So what would be a good date? Casco. How about Casco? 23.
That's in summer. Yeah, a little bit before.
June-ish. Right. This should be a great goal to bring 1.0 out in Kscope. And this would be a great incentive for you to present it at Kscope yourself, right? Talk to Niels and say, hey, I'm going to present it at Kscope, the 1.0 version.
Yeah, that's a big motivation.
Yeah.
Putting out a presentation saying I will have done it till then. And,
this is always, so I know, I think 99% of the presenters, they haven't done a slide yet. Either they have the presentation already for a long time, or they haven't done a slide yet, just an idea and say, oh, this is what I wanted to look into all the time, but I never had the pressure to do that. So you submit something you have no idea about, but you want to learn. And then once you get accepted, say, oh shit, now I have to really learn this and have to create my slides, right?
Seeing the date come always nearer, it's
yeah, exactly.
Then it's scary, but afterwards it's great that you've done it.
Yeah. No, I really can encourage people to do presentation. I started like that. So I know I did a REST thing once. I had no idea about REST at all, but I was always interested in this topic and said, okay, let me put under pressure myself and submit a presentation. Right. All right, great to talk to you, Philip. So whenever you have something new, happy to talk to you again and see you at Kscope with version 1.0.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye. Be prepared.
Yeah.
Big fireworks.
Bye, guy.
Bye.